Hi, and welcome to the Punk CX podcast. My name is Adrian Swinsko, and I'm an advisor, best-selling author, speaker, and general explorer when it comes to customer and employee experience. I'm really interested in figuring out what it takes to build organizations that produce better outcomes for both customers and employees. So with that in mind, I seek out and interview CEOs, entrepreneurs, business and tech leaders, authors and academics to uncover some clues about what it takes to build such an organization. Now, some of you may know the podcast as the Rare Business Podcast, but I decided to rename and rebrand the podcast recently. This is for a number of reasons. First one was to mirror the title of my book, Punk CX, which was published in June 2019. 2, because I'm a fan of punk music. And 3, it's just more fun, right? If this is your first time listening to one of these interviews, then hello and welcome. Please do dive into the archives at adrianswinsko.com, as I've now completed over 300 of these interviews in the last few years. If this is not your first time listening, then welcome back and thank you. So welcome to the next edition of the Punk CX podcast. With me today, I have Liat Bycel, who is the VP of Sales at Airtable. Hi, Liat. How are you doing?
Hi, Adrian. I'm good. How are you?
I am very well. So I should have asked before we started, but is Bycel the right way to pronounce your surname?
Super close. It's Bycel.
Bycel. Perfect. So, yeah, for the benefit of our listeners and people that read some of the highlights that I put together, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and also about the work that you do?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm the VP of Sales at Airtable, and Airtable enables anyone to build their own powerful custom applications that fit their needs without needing to know how to code. So it serves as a powerful single source of truth that empowers teams to work on the same structured set of data, making team collaboration easier. You know, in the past, creating these custom tech solutions would have cost a lot of money and required a small team of developers to create. And now any employee can just go build it for themselves. So I've scaled the team from a handful of people, 2.5 years ago to about 80 folks across the sales organization today. And as a sales team, we are focused on building, strategic long-term relationships with our customers, helping to decrease their time to value that they get from the product and really build trust and credibility as thought partners within every organization we work with.
Perfect. So if I'm right, then based on your description, so Airtable is just effectively like a no-code collaboration platform, right? That sort of aims to eliminate many parts of what has been described to me, and it was initially a concept that was described to me by Michael Ramsey of ServiceNow as this thing called the messy middle. Now, he was initially talking to me about that with reference to incidents that come up with customer service. But I think the messy middle sort of exists across all aspects of an organization. So I'm thinking about kind of like your platform and I guess eating your own dog food. So you're probably kind of well set up. So you were probably pretty well set up when the pandemic hit, right?
Yeah, yes, we were. And, we were using Airtable to manage a lot of workflows prior to the pandemic. So it definitely put us in a good position to manage through the massive change that we all had to respond to. We were leveraging Airtable internally, of course, eating your own dog food or drinking your own champagne, I like to say.
I think that's better. I think my wife might prefer that one, drinking your own champagne.
I like that better too. So we were leveraging Airtable internally across, many different use cases. One, that comes to mind is to manage, the new hire onboarding process, which was critical for us, as we were hiring at such a rapid pace before COVID hit, and the pace of hiring only continued to increase. So, another use case is how the sales team, runs their account plans, including, short-term and long-term goals for the customers, the asks for executive engagement, product feedback, which helps us to prioritize asks to our product team and instills confidence within our own team that their input is captured and shared. And, I think something about Airtable and how it really connects people, process, and data in one place so teams can really execute faster and make better decisions is very real. So a good customer experience really starts with, having the right tools to really empower customer-facing teams that can deliver personalization at scale. So the way that I think about personalization is the ability to really tailor the customer experience to their specific business needs and make them feel heard and appreciated, which can lead to revenue growth and, of course, create new value for businesses. And customers do expect that level of personalization. And if an account team doesn't provide it, they'll find another vendor that does.
Sure.
And circling back to the concept of messy middle, which I loved how you describe it. As a company, everyone, regardless of function, is focused on our customers. So not just the customer-facing teams that interact with customers on a daily basis. And at Airtable, the way that we help to really streamline workflows and empower teams to move quickly and focus on what matters most, which is the customer. So Airtable has really helped the transition to remote work because it does provide, one source of truth that lets teams collaborate and adjust in real time, as business needs or plans change.
And so, it sounds like, yes, you've been really well set up. So what has actually changed for your team over the last year? Or has it just been all clover, really?
No, so much has changed for our team this past year. It's hard to believe it's already been over a year. Previously, many customer interactions were in person. Mm-hmm. So we would do business reviews and customer visits and build relationships through those on-site visits and lunch and learns and office hours and customer dinners. And we really needed to quickly change the way we worked with our customers and build those same connections, but do it remotely. And we've really focused on getting a bit more personal, with every customer interaction. So we've tried to surprise and delight customers whenever we can by providing something ahead of schedule or sending swag or work from home survival kits in the early days of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. It wasn't an easy part of it, but something that did help us was that everyone was in the same boat. And even though everyone was having their own personal experience, people could relate to one another because we were all learning how to navigate this new remote working world together. Sure. And we've also increased the scale at which we work. So we've had to figure out how to collaborate in a remote working environment. Like we were all in office before. Mm-hmm. And we've hired close to, I think it's like over 130 new hires in the customer engagement organization since the pandemic hit. So we've really had to carve out time for virtual offsites and team bonding events, whether it's a cocktail making class or a tarot card reading or a virtual painting class, a virtual fitness class, you name it, we've tried it. And it has been critical for us to build that connectedness across the team, especially since so many of the folks on the team are new.
Okay. You alluded to the customer engagement team, and I also know that because your title is VP of Sales, yep. But you've also built this customer engagement org that you set up and are developing it. I wanted to ask you about that, because, what is it and how and why did it come about? Because I think you're kind of breaking down silos and trying to align the whole sales, service, and marketing aspects of the business, if that's correct.
Yeah, you nailed it. And it is a great question because I don't think customer engagement organizations are necessarily, industry standard in terms of how teams are structured. So, too many times customer-facing teams are kind of siloed off in their own organizations, mm-hmm. Where customer success doesn't have full visibility or a genuine partnership with customer support, or where, sales teams and customer success teams are not, they're not along a part of the same team, and they're not aligned to the same goals. And, for us, we really wanted to break down those silos, to your point, and all of our customer facing teams sit within the same broader customer engagement organization, so we can align our objectives and incentives to create a seamless customer experience across their entire journey with Airtable. And I've actually heard from many of our customers, how much they appreciate the close alignment across anyone they speak to in the Airtable organization, that it seems to them like they never have to re-explain their goals or their problem or what they're trying to accomplish, and that everyone seems to have all of the context of the relationship and business outcomes we are helping them to drive. So we are all speaking the same language to our customers and focused on empowering them to be as successful as possible with what they're building on Airtable. And, of course, we'll see how the organization continues to evolve. But so far, having all customer-facing teams as part of the same, larger umbrella organization has worked really well for us.
And what was the impetus behind that? I mean, was there just like a light bulb moment, or was something that happened, or how did you get to that kind of point? Because that's not usual, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite new.
Yeah, the impetus behind it was, when I started as the VP of sales, I kind of looked around and I realized that, and obviously we were much smaller at the time, but, the sales team, was kind of sitting in one corner of the office. And then the customer success team was sitting, for a bit further away, and the customer support team was even further away. And oftentimes, we were all talking to the same customers, but we weren't talking to each other, and we weren't, aligning with one another in terms of, how we wanted to approach the customer, regardless of what point they were in their Airtable journey. And so when I kind of realized that, and talking to our CEO Howie about it, it just made a lot of sense, to have all of those teams, working, across the same organization.
And how does that work in, just sort of day to day? I mean, do you have people that are embedded in different sort of teams, or do you just have kind of big kind of meetings, or how does that actually kind of work? How do you kind of, I feel like, force people to talk to each other, or create the opportunities that people kind of improve communication and connectedness and alignment?
Yeah, so we have broader customer engagement, like quarterly kickoffs and big all hands. We share, customer learnings, whether those are, customer learnings that we can learn from and do better next time, or celebratory wins. We have, shared Slack channels. We have trainings all together. So even though, within each group, the sales team is very much on a sales team, same with the customer success team, and same with the customer support team. But since everyone reports up into our CRO, there is that alignment across the broader organization around our priorities, and how to make sure that we are strategically aligned.
Okay. I'd imagine also you're probably all working from the same data source as well.
We sure are.
Well, because that's kind of, I was speaking to somebody, David Campbell from Sugar CRM, and they are about a piece of research that they had recently, they had released recently, and they said that something shockingly like over 50% of sales professionals or people just don't have access to the same pool of data, as it were. So you have a sales view and you have a service view, and you might have a success view, and for some reason there are just like administrative access barriers in place, and so people haven't kind of almost broken those down, so people aren't working from the same pool of data. So it seems to be that becomes an essential part of that alignment. That everybody's working off, as you said before, from the single source of truth.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Okay. So now, I guess you're still working in some sort of hybrid sort of way of working. We have been doing that for the last 12 sort of, we've been working sort of like remotely for the last 12, 15 months. Mm-hmm. And you're probably considering some sort of return to the office or some sort of hybrid kind of future way of kind of working, even though you probably don't have to because you're all very well kind of like set up. But I'd like to ask you to tell me, what are the things you think, and what are you seeing that you think will stick from some of the stuff that we've adopted, some of the things the ways of working that we've adopted over the course of the last 12 or so months? And what elements will come back? And what do you think we'll end up sort of doing differently now? Because I think that that's the next thing, right? Some sort of hybrid future way back to the office sort of thing that we need to wrestle with.
Yes, absolutely. I think we will all learn so much in the coming months about the future way of working. And, I do think there will continue to be the need for one source of truth and connecting data that, is used to, previously would potentially be siloed across a lot of different systems, like we were just talking about, but really making sure that everyone does have access to the data that they need in order to do their jobs well, especially as some organizations are taking that, a hybrid approach to give employees the flexibility, by working a few days in the office and, a few days remotely, there will be an increased emphasis on the tools that organizations are using. If you can't talk to someone at your desk in person, all of a sudden the tech you use to communicate and collaborate is more important and even more critical than ever before. So I think we'll probably see a closer examination of the tools and IDing, what's working and what doesn't work, where there might be opportunities that exist in other tools that they may bring to the table as we all kind of go back into whatever the new way of working will be. And I think since we have all proven, over the past 15 months or so that teams can work collaboratively while being remote, it's just a matter of, taking the best practices from what has worked really well, and continuing them, as we all go back to that new way of working. So whether that's, and having that single source of truth so that everyone has access to the exact data that they need to be successful in their roles, to, building in some type of drumbeat of communication on, how an organization or a team is performing, to making sure that transparency is still something that is prioritized. Like, I think there's a lot of things that, at least for Airtable, has worked really well, that will absolutely stick as we make that shift back to some type of hybrid world of working.
Yeah. It seems to me that it just struck me as well, because you mentioned onboarding and the fact that you've had to onboard a number of new people who've all been onboarded remotely, I guess, over the course of the last year. And I'm wondering, just occurred to me, I wonder if you're going to have to go through another onboarding process with them if you move to that hybrid, because they don't have the in-office, at-work type of experience that other people kind of know, particularly with reference to kind of like Airtable. So I wonder if that's something you need to factor into your thinking as well.
I mean, I think that's an excellent point. I think we're all going to need to go through some type of onboarding, because I think that for so long, I notice as a leader, when you're in back-to-back Zoom meetings, it's often really easy to just jump right into business and then you don't really have the time to connect because you don't have those elevator rides or, quick chats while you're getting, an additional cup of coffee or whatever the case is. And so I do think that, there will need to be both an onboarding for people that, didn't experience that energy in the office that we had, prior to the pandemic, but also probably a re-onboarding for all employees. Yeah. Of how we work and what our values are and how we collaborate cross-functionally and things like that, because obviously it has been different over the past like we said 15 months.
Yeah, no, absolutely, because I think it's a really interesting idea, is that it sort of reflect on how culture has changed or morphed or evolved a little bit, particularly kind of given the circumstances, and how is it going to change again as things change, keep changing? And so assume that everything kind of remains the same and you've adapted. Well, sometimes those things are probably worth re-examining, I guess.
Yes, absolutely.
So talking about a collaboration kind of platform, as you have done, and your experience, that can possibly feel a little bit kind of esoteric, to some people. So I wonder if you could bring this to life for us a little bit and sort of give us a couple of examples of people that have, and firms that have leveraged your tech and what they've been able to do differently, and how has it benefited them and their customers and their employees, just to bring kind of what the capability that you're offering to life? Because I think that'd be really interesting.
Yeah, I'm happy to. It's hard to narrow down just to a couple, but I will give it a shot. So one that does come to mind that actually completely had to pivot their strategy in the pandemic is the Equinox Group.
Mm-hmm.
They also own SoulCycle and Blink Fitness, which historically was a business entirely based on in-person interactions, right? When the pandemic hit, they had to completely overhaul how they engaged with customers in a COVID-safe way. They were a business built around, in-person training and fitness classes, and had to completely pivot to almost becoming a content company overnight.
Right.
To make that abrupt transition from, communal to at-home fitness. Equinox Media, which is a subsidiary of the Equinox Group, quickly became the core focus of their growth strategy. And this happened through the launch of their Equinox Plus platform, which includes both their mobile app and the SoulCycle at-home bike. And, the pandemic lockdown also shifted a lot of their priorities on the content team specifically, because one of the biggest challenges that they talked to our team about was, how are they all going to continue to work in lockstep, understand what each teammate was working on, and really provide visibility to all collaborators without being together in person. And so, the purpose, of course, was to share content from all the brands with a now remote member base. But the challenge was to find ways to do that seamlessly and with a newly formed remote content team. And, so as the new mobile fitness apps launched, and the business went online and digital first, a workflow needed to be created within Airtable, which was not like the key workflows the company had before. They were a customer before the pandemic.
Sure.
But with respect to content, really keeping people informed, giving them online options and choices. And also, if you think about the marketing of all of that as well, that had to move online, Equinox did use Airtable to manage that transition. So, they began to roll out their new Airtable ecosystem in March of last year. And because Equinox Media works with multiple stakeholders and content models, they needed to have one place as that source of truth in order to have a single reliable view of their content. And using Airtable, they created a system where they are now able to move every asset almost through like a SKU-like system. So from initial collaboration of programming with their partners through delivery to their client apps, there's a single ID created that is used in a multitude of locations that can always be searched in various Airtable bases to find every detailed piece of information about that asset. And while working remotely, they've also relied heavily on automations to provide informational handoffs from different teammates. So one person, on one side of the country can now flip a status, and the stakeholder receives a review link to approve that content instantaneously. And similar to every class being tracked and maintained in Airtable, each subsequent video clip and image is also managed through that exact same system, which allows them to not only see the additional deliverables, but also trace back to the source for various marketing requests. So by utilizing Airtable, each week they are able to seamlessly hand off numerous marketing deliverables that are used to promote their weekly published class list and to reach members and new potential customers as well. So this actually resulted in the ability for Equinox Media to create and leverage a production tracking system in Airtable, and then build that out further to support their APIs, which has significantly decreased their time to publish. And so it's been incredible to work with them and see how quickly they're now able to move.
And are they doing live classes or pre-recorded classes or both?
They're doing both.
Wow. So that means they would also have had to factor in the production of the live classes and setting people like their trainers up in their own studios and so on and so forth.
That's exactly right. The complexity of what that workflow is it's been incredible to see how quickly they've been able to launch that and truly pivot in this new world for them.
Wow.
And I can give you one more example, and I don't have to go into too much detail if we have time.
Please do.
Another example is GitHub. So, GitHub makes it easier for developers to work together and is a place where developers can create and share and ship the best code possible. They also have one of the largest developer relations programs in the world called GitHub Stars, which really helps them to advocate, for developers and enrich the GitHub community. And right after, they opened up the nomination process for this program, the GitHub Stars program, they received over 2,000 nominations, which made it apparent to that team that, spreadsheets couldn't really handle the scale and complexity of the program. So the developer relations team needed to review each application. They needed early access to certain features, invitations to exclusive events. They needed to send out swag and probably even forgetting a few things that they needed to do throughout this process. But it quickly got to be a very complex and overwhelming workflow for the team. And so they now run that Airtable, that program and recruitment of developers out of Airtable, which has now become, the command center for managing the GitHub Stars program, including the nomination process, the application review, NDA tracking, swag shipments. And, during the pandemic, they were able to continue to operate seamlessly because they did move this whole program, out of spreadsheets into Airtable.
Excellent. So is there anything else you'd like to add or highlight that we've missed out? Because before I ask you just to step back a little bit and give us your take on the broader service and experience sort of space.
No, I think we covered it. I guess the only thing to really highlight is just what we've learned is the importance of ensuring consistent delivery of value to our customers by showing them empathy and really deeply understanding their pain points to make it easy for them to solve their biggest problems on our platform. So we really do everything we can to drive, customer empathy throughout the entire company, which has been great to see.
Yeah, no, awesome. I think that those things have very much come to the fore over the last year or so. But if I ask you to step back and take a view on the whole sort of service and experience sort of space, what do you think the future of service and experience looks like? And what do you think are maybe some of the key challenges ahead or that we've got to navigate if we're going to be successful?
Such a good question. I do think that customer expectations will continue to rise. So customers will continue to want fast answers. They want their specific issues addressed as they are experiencing them. So that means, faster response times, more real-time conversations, and really increased personalization to solve their specific needs. And, I think some of the challenges are, on one hand, I think about it in terms of, the challenge to really maintain and scale a company culture remotely or in a hybrid environment is going to be a challenge, right? Like there's an increased importance of being intentional about company culture, increasing opportunities for employees to connect both in and outside their teams. And I think when so many employees haven't really felt like what it's like to show up when you walk in the door every morning, like we talked about, or feel the palpable energy of coworkers in a brainstorming session, or, we all used to have lunch together, building a strong, high-performing, collaborative company culture will just be something that, I know Airtable and many other organizations will really need to prioritize. So on one hand, I think about that challenge. And on the other hand, it's really about, I think another challenge is around defining the process to manage the tools that organizations adopt. So really, figuring out what the tech stack support, figuring out the right mix of tools, how to connect data across the different tools, I know is a huge challenge for organizations, which is why, we prioritize integrations and flexibility when we choose tools. But I do think that, that will also be a challenge that lies ahead.
Okay. And just one final question, because, with all these conversations, we tend to talk about some broad sweeps of things and give everybody like a big to-do list, as it were, or lots of things to think about. But if I was to ask you to boil it all down and for somebody that wants to improve the service or experience they deliver to customers, I mean, what would be your best advice to them? What would be the one or two things that you would say to them? Do this, and you can't go wrong, or you'll make a good start.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few. So,
well, go on then.
Yeah,
give us a few.
I'll give you a few. So I think first is really really embracing change. And using tools that help you to manage that change. So we're all in this fast changing environment, regardless of industry. And I do believe it's important to adopt tools that really evolve with your organization, so the tools can evolve with you as your business continues to change. Mm-hmm. The second is really around adaptability and agility. So, making sure that you are using processes and tools that help you to customize your workflow and allow you and your team to work exactly how you want to work. So there are so many times it's the people creating the workflow who deeply understand and know how they need a tool to work versus being forced to change the way they work because of a tool. Sure. And this will, really help companies, I think, be flexible as the needs of their customers change. So I think that adaptability is key. Another thing is really creating a culture around transparency and visibility across all parts of the organization. So I think it's really key to automate reporting because business leaders and other stakeholders need real-time insights. And if you can automate how you deliver that data, you will save so much time and allow your teams to work on really high impact customer facing work. So I actually just spoke to a customer of ours last week who, prior to using Airtable, she said that she spent 6 to 8 hours at minimum a week pulling manual reports and preparing decks for executives to share campaign insights and status updates. And now she can just share a link to a dashboard in Airtable. She's able to spend all that time, all those hours on speaking with customers and managing quality control and coaching her team. So I do think that the more that you can increase visibility across the organization, that is very, very important to keep top of mind. And then the last, but certainly not least, is obviously around the customer empathy piece that we talked about earlier. I think it's just so important to really deeply understand where your customers are coming from and truly really dig deep to understand their pain point, what their pain points are, so that you can truly help them solve whatever problems that they have.
Perfect. Thank you for that. So that brings me to my 2 final questions that I always ask.
Right.
And these are the punk questions. And I always explained to you before we got started. I have 2 questions. The first one is, what word would you use to describe a punk approach to customer experience? Now, I did warn you, I've got a list of 125 of these assembled over the last last couple of years, I guess. So yeah. The challenge is, can you pick one that's not on the list? Over to you, or 2, as you like.
Yes, I think picking one word is a challenge. When I think of the word punk as an ethos of an organization, I think about, rejecting the old traditional ways of working and being bold enough to work the way that you want to. So I guess 2 words would be bold and courageous.
Bold and courageous. Perfect.
You'll have to tell me if I passed your test and if those are.
I think that bold and courageous are already there, but rejecting old ways, I think is not on there.
Okay, good. I'm good with that.
And so what company or brand do you think epitomizes more of a punk approach to customer experience?
Yeah, so I thought a lot about this because there are those obvious there are those obvious brands that I think epitomize a punk type of ethos. But a company that came to mind for me is a company called Pair of Thieves, which is a basics American apparel company. So they took a somewhat boring category of socks, underwear, t-shirts. And, for a while, actually, nobody knew their name and they just knew the logo, which is a bear with a mask on it. And apparently the logo broke all the design rules, like they can't reverse it, they can't put it in color, they can't make it small. But, they didn't really care and they just wanted to make it memorable and fun. And there's one funny story. One of the founders once told me that when they went to Nordstrom to meet with the Nordstrom buying team, they're sold in Target and Nordstrom and a lot of other retailers, large retailers. When they went to Nordstrom to initially sell them, the factory actually messed up their shipment of samples. So, they would typically walk into those meetings with a lot of samples to show the buyers. And they walked into this meeting without any samples, but they had, strike offs, which are like tiny little swatches of their designs. And so they actually cut them up and knit them onto Barbie dolls, like Ken dolls, to show them the product. And they didn't win the Nordstrom account that year, but when they came back the next year, there were like 25 people in the room, more than double the number of people than were in the room the year previously, because everyone, had heard across multiple different teams about what had happened with the Ken dolls the previous year, and they wanted to see what would happen this time. And they did end up winning the account that year. And something that I really appreciate about them is that they take a very human-centric approach to customer support. They do all of it in-house. They wanted to remain a human company, which does set them apart actually from their competition. And when they launched, they hired copywriters to handle customer support because they wanted excellent writers to handle customer support tickets over anything else. And they've embraced the word sneaky. So they create products that are all about sneaky performance. So they hide, performance features under cool designs. And they're a brand that, really likes surprises, and they equate their product to a type of surprise upgrade, the concept of like you paid for Coach, but you get first class.
Right.
So they try to really take that same approach with their customer experience. And one thing they do is, which is kind of funny, is in every email they send to their customers, they hide, secret links to a discount code, which actually encourages customers to read their full email content. And it actually works.
Right. So, nice. So what was the name of the brand again?
Pair of Thieves.
Pair of Thieves.
Mm-hmm.
As in people that steal stuff.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. An interesting name as well. I'll check them out.
Great.
So yeah, that's all I have. I mean, I love the story at the end as well, and so thank you for sharing that. But I also just want to say thank you for sharing your time and your insight with us today, and also congratulations on the success of Airtable as a platform, and also your ability to use it and to grow so fast over the last kind of few months. To help yourself and also help your kind of clients. And but yeah, so thank you for that. That's been great.
Thank you so much, Adrian. I really enjoyed it.
Well, that was cool. I hope you enjoyed it. I did, and I always do actually, because I always learn something new when I speak to some of these amazing kind of people. And it's always something new that I can incorporate into my writing, speaking, workshops, and other sort of advisory work that I do. Now, if you're interested in learning about any of that sort of stuff, then you can find out more about how I work with clients over at adrianswinscoe.com. One final thing before I go, please consider heading over to iTunes or Spotify or whichever podcast platform you choose to use, and do leave a review. Every little helps, as they say. Anyway, that's all for now. Thank you for listening, and do tune in again soon. All the very best. Cheers. Bye.